So I've been really interested in the whole idea of walk-ons, and I think there's an entire concept around it. And we've been talking about this for years now of making a podcast about it. But I think in your guys' specific position, there's a lot to learn from. And like we talked about last week, I think every experience is different. You emphasized that it's not a universal concept. So just before we even start, could you guys describe what it even means to be a walk-on nowadays, and what are the difficulties of it, like in comparison to, I don't know, a regular recruit on scholarship, if you want to call it that?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I can start. But yeah, walk-on just means that you like weren't formally recruited to be on the team from high school. Like you didn't sign a letter of intent. It can be kind of a technical term. So you get kids who like come into school as like a preferred walk-on, which means that although you weren't technically like recruited and didn't technically sign a letter of intent, you were still kind of brought in as pretty much a recruit. It's just like a technicality. So you get kind of a range where you get those kind of kids, and then you get kids who maybe weren't even planning on playing college soccer, and then they make the team through a tryout process or something else. So yeah. I'm not sure if that. Yeah,
so is the preferred walk-on a legit thing? Like I remember talking with George, and he said that at BU, people would come on campus and they were like, oh, I'm a preferred walk-on, but they like never made it the team. Is that a thing? Like, did you guys ever meet these people or no? Were you guys preferred walk-ons? I don't know.
I was like closer probably than Oscar. Like I was going through the recruiting process here, and then it just happened that there wasn't like a scholarship spot for me, or a tag, I guess, which is what a lot of recruited athletes get. But like coming here, I knew I would at least have like a pretty good shot of being on the team. And like when I came in during COVID, that's messed it up a little bit. But I did have a pretty good idea that I would be on the team, but it wasn't a guarantee per se.
Take me through the recruiting process, especially like you both have very different stories. You're from the Bay, but you were all over the place in the States. You're from SoCal. So like what were your recruiting processes like? And I know that's an individual answer, but I'm curious as to how you got to where you are today. Did COVID mess any of these things up for you in the process, or what were the issues leading up to it?
Yeah, I can go first. I don't know how deep we want to talk about like my whole high school experience, but I moved around. I played at Barca Academy in Arizona, and then I played at Orlando City. And then junior year, I was getting some looks like back east, some like D3 stuff. But after living away from home, it made me appreciate how much I like the Bay Area and California. And I knew I just wanted to come back here, and I also knew I wanted to go to a good academic school. And then throughout the years, I had been going to Cal camps, and I built a relationship with Kevin Grimes, our old coach. And I knew I had like a decent shot of coming here because we had a good relationship. He liked how I played. I like fit the style. And then when I came back here and I had decided that no matter what, I was going to go to school in California, I told Coach Grimes about that. And, we kind of went through a recruiting process during COVID. It was like a bit scuffed. But he said to me, like, as long as I got to the school on my own, I would have a pretty good shot. And luckily that worked out, and I got in. And yeah, I didn't play that freshman year because COVID was happening and we weren't on campus. But coming into that next summer in the fall of my sophomore year, that's when I joined up on the team, and yeah, pretty much made it.
Just for you personally, did you apply to other schools like besides Cal?
Yeah, I played to all the UCs, USC, Stanford. I got into a few others, but definitely Berkeley was like a pretty big shock. I didn't think I was going to get in. So I was happy it worked out.
There you go. What about you, Oscar?
Yeah, I mean, although our kind of processes were different, I feel like there was a lot of overlap too. For me, like I was trying to go D3 out of high school. That's kind of where I focused my recruiting. I was going to ID camps. I was emailing coaches, doing all that stuff. And yeah, I just kind of wanted more of a mixed experience. Kind of a bit of sports with maybe the usual kind of college stuff. So D3 was really the kind of prime thing for me. But yeah, I mean, after applying to a bunch of colleges and like seeing how everything worked and money and everything, I had to kind of come to an in-state school. And so Berkeley ended up being kind of the only option for me, funnily enough. So in many ways I was kind of bummed. I was like, damn, like I can't go to like a D3 school, even after going through like multiple recruiting processes with them. So yeah, I mean, when I got in here, I thought I was like done with soccer. I was like, okay, that's it. Like It's like a D1 Pac-12 program, like whatever. But of course, like I had to give it a shot. So my club coach at the time had a connection with Kevin Grimes, who Jake was talking about, our old head coach. And yeah, he like said, hey, I have a goalie coming in. He's already gotten into school. I sent him my highlight reel at the time. And then, yeah, fortunately, they kind of needed a goalie at the time. You guys had like some injuries. And yeah, I didn't play in the fall like Jake because of COVID. I was going to come for that, the COVID spring season.
Yeah.
You know, the weird spring season. But I hurt my knee. So, yeah, that got delayed. But then, yeah, I came in that summer after. So summer 21, had kind of a tryout period. And then, yeah, joined the same time as Jake. So.
You both mentioned ID camps, and I'm curious as to how impactful you guys think it was. For example, on my end, I went to one in my life, and it was like as a freshman, and I just thought they weren't as useful, but I don't know, from what you guys are saying, like they built connections. So do you think they're helpful or useful?
I would say, I think going into an ID camp just kind of like blind, like if the coach doesn't know who you are, like you're not on anyone's radar, I think it is a bit like it doesn't matter too much. But as I kept coming back to Cal camps and like Grimes knew who I was and they looked out for me. And I know at Cal camp there was like a select group of people they were actually looking at. So I think when that happens, it is valuable. But I think showing up without even reaching out to a coach has some drawbacks unless you really like ball out. I think it's pretty unlikely you're to get picked up, at least at a big school like Cal, like this. I think at smaller schools, it's more important, but at like a big school like Cal, it'd be pretty tough.
Yeah, I agree. I think you got to be super intentional. I think I definitely went to a few ID camps that I probably shouldn't have, or that were kind of a waste of time. Like Jake said, going in there kind of raw and like with no idea is not the smartest move. And I think the ones that benefited my recruiting, even back when I was looking at other schools, were like, okay, I'm serious about this school. I've talked to the coach. We've been in touch. It's somewhat serious. Okay, I'll go to a camp that they'll be at, or even like their camp. You know, sometimes you'll have the ones with a bunch of coaches, and sometimes you'll have the ones that are just one school. So yeah, I think just being intentional about it is how you make it worth your while.
And what about the emails? Obviously, you said you built a relationship with Kevin Grimes. You sent plenty of emails or even reached out immediately. I feel like to an extent, some people are like scared of sending cold emails, like in general, and you can connect it with anything, whether it's a cold email or even like a cold direct message. Like I know of younger guys that have DM'd some of the current players and, oh, I'm going to this school, or I'm going to join your team. I'm going to be one of your teammates. And it's like, it's a great way to open up relationships and networking, because I feel like people think, oh, they're going to reject me anyways. But in reality, there's not that many people doing it. So you're like, I'm sure if one of you guys got a DM from one of the younger guys coming in, you'd probably reply. Like, I don't see why not. Did you guys ever face that fear of failure at all? Like in that process of like, what if he doesn't reply? What if he doesn't reach back, or not really? Or did you see that like with former teammates? I definitely saw that with club teammates of like, why would I even email that coach? Like, they're not going to look at me type of thing. And what was the advantage that you guys saw from doing it? Because it clearly worked out, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, but I was never really like DMing like players on the teams or like coaches. I know like on Twitter and like for college, like football recruiting, like there's kind of a big space for that. But yeah, no, I mean, a lot of the kind of recruiting attempts I made were just through kind of emails, and a good amount of them were cold. Like you were saying, like it's kind of hard to establish that first connection with a coach without like sending a cold email. So I don't think there's any like harm in it. Like it can be a lot of work. You know, you got to draft it. You got to make it specific to the school. That was like a big thing, like drafting an email. I had like my club coach help me out with that, and it's important to kind of know what to include. But I think it's part of the process. Like you're gonna get left on delivered or whatever. Like coaches aren't gonna open your emails. They probably get thousands of emails of interest. But every once in a while, you know, you'll get a coach back who emails you back who's like, okay, I'm actually like, this could be a good relationship. So I think it's a percentage thing.
Out of that thousands of emails that they're getting, did you guys do anything to stand out? Like, for example, I know from George's story, because he also walked on at BU. Mm-hmm. he drove from Connecticut to BU for a 5-minute meeting in person when it could have been over the phone. But he was like, I need the coach to see that I really care, so I'm going to be there in person. Did you guys like do anything? Obviously, that's a lot, but in your emails or communication, was there anything that was like, oh, I'm going to do this, and that'll give me an advantage over whoever else is trying to get recruited here?
I don't know about you.
I feel like I didn't do too much. I definitely did some research like about the school and about the program beyond like what you could just find on the first link on Google. I think like knowing stuff about a coach's history, where they coached before, like just where they're from is nice to know. I know when I like talked to Grimes, I didn't have to commute 3 hours, but I would go talk to him in person most of the time. But yeah, I didn't think it was nothing like too special. I feel like one thing I did well, which was helped a lot like through my parents, was like I laid out kind of like what my best, like what I could really bring to the table, and a lot of that for me was I was like a good student, and I knew that was like a calling card for me because a lot of other soccer players are not good students, and every team needs people who are going to be good students on the team. So I made that pretty clear as well, like as well with being a good athlete. I made it pretty clear that like I would have help with the GPA on the team, and I could get like it wouldn't be like a big hassle getting into school here. And I think that's important because coaches don't want to deal with people who are failing out. If it's like really hard, like it's hard to get into Berkeley. If it's a really hard time for me to get into Berkeley, why would he even spend time on me? So I feel like I made that pretty clear that that was like another thing I could bring to the table.
Yeah, like doubling down on where your strengths shine the most, and you have the least amount of competition, really, because other recruits don't have your GPA or things like that.
Exactly.
What about you?
I think what George is talking about is also kind of a strong part of the puzzle. Like obviously you got to focus on your strengths too. That's such a natural part of kind of bolstering your like recruiting profile. But I also think like for me, like I remember during kind of later in my recruiting process, I took a trip to the East Coast to visit family up there, and I was also looking at 2 schools in Boston and then 1 up in New York. And so obviously it was helpful just to tour the schools anyway, but I made sure while I was out there I was like, okay, let me get a meeting with the coach in while I can, to show that I'm kind of legit about it and I'm making the effort to go out there. So I think maybe they're not like super game changing moves, but that little extra effort can show a lot, I think, to a coach as well. So yeah, I think just giving yourself the best chance through like steps like that.
Because it's little things. I think, especially for you, what you just said, or even you, like you said, I'm just crossing a bridge. Like it's not a 3-hour commute. Or for you, I'm visiting my family. But I feel like it's these tiny details that literally puts you right over an advantage against everybody else. Like, because when I think about kids getting recruited, right, I feel like they won't even send good emails. Like it's not even good emails, or on the phone they're like they don't know what their strengths are or things like that, or what could make them different. If you just focus on, well, I'm a really good soccer player and I'll like keep possession and I'm fit, it's like, well, yeah, every single person is going to be like that, right? Or at least they'll describe themselves that way. But it's those little things of, oh, I'll come meet you in person, cross country. They don't have to know that it was for a family trip, but you still made the effort. You could just be on vacation. Or for you, like, I was a good student. Let me use that to my advantage. And again, I feel like, I don't know if I've told you about this, but I was coming to this realization this semester through some work in the journalism school, because obviously like there's people there that are way older than me. They have professional experience on all these different things. But I found that the quickest, and you know how I am, like the whole work hard type of thing. And I have friends that always like piss me off with like work smarter, not harder type of thing. And like, for you, sometimes you're always like, be more efficient. Like you don't have to work so hard. And I came to this realization that like, you don't have to, like, you just have to go. The only shortcut you'll find is where your strengths shine the most and you have the least amount of competition. And I feel like that's what you two were talking about, just like being strategic about it.
Totally.
Moving forward, like, were you ever questioned? I know you had like full support from your family, I'm pretty sure. But Oscar, like specifically for you, were you ever questioned by family or even friends? Because I know you had like a big social life here in Berkeley. So it's like, why are you trying to get on the team? Like you could be hanging out with us. You could be partying here. Like, did people ever question your ability to get on the team?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for starters, like my parents, well, they're both European. They don't really understand how much of the American process works, much like the college process, much less like sports in the college process. So they were kind of just supportive in their own way. But I feel like for me, I like I didn't have much of a life here until I actually came to campus. So I feel like when I properly started being a Berkeley student and like, coming to campus and living here, I was already on the team at that point. So for me, it was like I never really had too much of a life here before that. So yeah, I mean, I was never in the place where like, oh, people maybe were doubting me here or stuff like that. I had kept a pretty close circle while I was in the recruiting process trying to get here, and I feel like my friends were pretty supportive. So yeah, I guess I didn't really have any haters at the time. But
I feel like it happens often. Like I do have friends that failed, quite frankly, but other friends were like, "Why are you still even trying? Like why are you going after this?" And it kind of makes sense. It's like focus on your academics, or like come hang out with us instead of like waiting a full semester or things like that. Even George got kicked off, not of the varsity team, of the club team, and then he was still training, and friends were like, well, why are you still doing this? Like you couldn't even make club. Why keep going? And it's not like, oh, I have haters type of thing, but it does suck sometimes, don't you think? Like people not understanding it, if that makes any sense. Like did you we'll get into this later, but I'm sure at some point you two being in the same boat is what made you really close friends at the same time. Like, so it's like, did you have anybody to rely on during that process, or like because of COVID, did other people close to you experience the same thing?
I guess I could probably speak most. I think it's funnily enough, my dad kind of actually went through nearly the exact same experience for baseball here in the 80s. So he kind of talked me through a lot of it, and he ended up quitting after a year because he didn't think it was worth it to him. But he had a lot of insight on kind of what it would be like to be a walk-on. Like I really, like when I joined the team, I didn't think I was really ever going to play much. It's a lot of work still. And I know I had friends that were like just surprised like that I even played soccer here, because during COVID there was nowhere to play really. But yeah, I think it was a lot my parents. I also had a lot of friends that were going into college during COVID playing soccer the whole time. But yeah, I think that is why me and Oscar being good friends, I think we came in with a very similar perspective on how we wanted to both treat soccer and treat college. And yeah, I think that's kind of how we ended up being really tight.
Yeah.
I think maybe going to your point about doubt though, I feel like most of the doubt I faced in the process of becoming a player here was super internal.
Yeah.
I feel like that was the heaviest.
For sure.
Especially when I was at a point where I hurt my knee abroad, and I was like, wow, I've already got COVID to deal with, and now I got this long-term knee injury, and I'm not going to be able to get my tryout in the spring like I originally expected. At some point I was like, should I really even keep trying at this? I feel like I'm so under such a mountain now that it felt like I should just kind of cut my losses in a way. But I don't know. I felt like I had a really supportive physical therapist at the time with my knee who helped me out a lot. But yeah, so I think a lot of the doubt and negativity surrounding the process of getting on the team here was a lot of myself, and yeah, I think that's such a big hill to overcome, and it feels good when not only you prove other people wrong, but more you prove yourself wrong too, in a good way. So yeah,
I'm sure there's a process of getting on the team, and I want to talk about that a bit later because I went through the same thing. But I want to stick there for a second. Before you even start, there's that fear of failure naturally. What was it though that kept you going? Did you have the same experience as well? Were you ever is this even worth it? Am I good enough to even be on here? And if so, what made you try?
Yeah. I think for me, a lot of it was if I looked at myself after finishing college or 25 or 30 and I didn't even try, I'd be why did I not try? What's the harm? I love playing soccer. I love being on a team. There's no reason not to try. If I fail, I fail. It was pretty much just what it was for me. I really didn't think I had a chance once after COVID because so much had changed. But there was really no reason not to. And yeah, that kind of just made me push through it and make sure I drove every day over for captain's camp in the summer. Early, I would get up at 6 a.m. to come out here when we did those morning ones, and I made sure to come to every single one in that first summer because I was if I don't do it now, I'm not gonna have a chance to do it again. So I think that just thinking about looking back, like why not, kind of pushed me to do it.
I agree. I also think like for me, like I learned like through the process that it was going to come down to like a weekend like tryout kind of experience. And so I was thinking in my recovery, I'm like, okay, if I could just do everything I can to prepare for these 2 or 3 days, like why not? You know, like it's only 2-3 days. Like that was kind of what I was focusing on. I was like, just be the best soccer player you can, be the healthiest you can for these 3 days. That's all you can do. And yeah, I mean, like Jake, like why live with that regret? Like you might as well like give it your all while you can.
Yeah. There's this quote that I got from the podcast it's much better to try and fail than to not try at all and regret that. And I think about that so often. Like there's this thing I saw on YouTube as well. Like even if we fail, what better way is there to live? Because if you haven't tried, you haven't lived. And it's like little things like that obviously sound cheesy and stuff. But when you really think about it, I've been thinking about it personally, and we can talk about that later because it's not related to the podcast. But in certain areas of my life too, it's like, should I try that or should I not? And it's like, what's the worst case scenario? And I don't think we think about that often. Like for you guys, what was the worst case scenario? Literally, you're in the exact same situation. You're already in Berkeley.
Yeah.
Like you would have been fine.
Yeah.
But I feel like many people get stuck, and I can give examples of like people I know from back home that stayed in I don't think I'm good enough. Or like, what if they reject me and like the team makes fun of me after that? And it's like, nobody cares. Yeah. Nobody's thinking about you. It's all in your head. To close off this first stage of the conversation, once you did get in, did anybody say you got lucky, or did you have that experience at all? Like people saying, like it was just because of this situation or X, Y, and Z. Did you guys have that?
Not like to my face. You know what I mean? Like no, not really. I don't know about you.
I feel like I didn't have anyone say you were like lucky, but I definitely think there's people who were surprised when I was not like the best player on my team at Orlando City or at Barca Academy, and there's guys going to way worse schools than Berkeley, pretty much everyone. So I definitely think there's people who are like, wow, like especially after that year of COVID, that I was doing it, but I don't think anyone said to me that I got lucky or anything like that.
No. To move on, there's this thing I was reading. In 1902, the sociologist Charles Horton Cooley wrote, "I am not what I think I am, and I am not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am." So it's like it's all in your head. And I bring this up because of the struggles of fitting into the team. And I'm curious, what was difficult about fitting in? Did you guys feel like you belonged at the beginning? Did you feel viewed differently at any point? What role how did this affect your role, not only on the field, but in the locker room? And I have a lot to say personally about this as well. So how was it like those first few months for you guys in the fall of 21?
I mean, it was tough, for sure. That first semester season, first of all, like me, like just getting acquainted to the lifestyle was hard enough. And yeah, I mean, you obviously have to adjust to the level too. I was probably, pretty behind coming in. And so I felt like I was physically not quite with everyone else, and socially you're also, that's kind of the biggest thing. I feel like you're not really super embedded into the team yet. I mean, maybe you can tell us, but as a recruit coming in, you're coming in with guys who you kind of know or aware of, and you're a kind of cohesive recruiting class together, like you saw with our freshmen this year. I feel like they came in pretty tight. And so, Jake, I don't know what you think, but coming in, especially as a sophomore, not even a freshman, and not knowing anyone on the team, it's super tough. And then also, like you were saying, you're kind of thinking, what do they think about me? Coming in here as a walk-on, do they think I belong? I'm not coming really from the same soil that these guys are. So yeah, no, it was tough for sure, especially that first semester. Yeah, but it got better. I don't know if we want to get into that now, but
we'll get into that part later. But okay. For let's stick it in this sucky part for a bit.
Yeah, it was really hard. It sucked at the beginning, my imposter syndrome of am I good enough to be here? do I fit in with the guys? It was like really hard. I mean, I think there was a large chunk of the fall where I was like, God, I should just quit. I had like a terrible start because I had COVID like instantly on the team. And it was like really sucky. And I wasn't playing, obviously. Like even at practice, I wasn't playing a ton. So it was really hard. Like I think the hardest part was definitely socially. I think like throughout the season, like I was like getting more into it. And I was like, oh, I feel like I can definitely play with these guys. I like trusted my ability to play soccer with them, but socially it was really tough. And I mean, going into that, after that season ended, there was definitely a lot of like in my head, like, should I even bother like keeping this going? Because it was really hard, but I'm obviously really happy I did. And like, I love the guys now. And I learned a lot about like you and guys I didn't even talk to that much in the fall. That made it a lot better, but it was definitely really hard fall, that first one.
When you did consider quitting, why didn't you?
I think it was the same thing of I'd look back and I'd be like, why did I quit? I was gifted like such an amazing opportunity. And my dad talks about this all the time. Like 99.9% of soccer players would kill to be in the shoes we're in. I mean, that sounds arrogant, but it's true. Like we're playing at one of the best schools in the world. And to throw something like that away just like because I didn't fit in with the guys after a few months of knowing them would have been pretty stupid. And I think I ended the season playing well soccer-wise. And I was really like hoping I could take that to another level in the spring and get some more minutes and play a little bit more and try to show like what I could do.
I think the actual stat from the NCAA is that 1.7% of high school soccer players in the U.S. play Division I. Yeah. And then you cut down Division I where there's 200 teams across 32 or 33 conferences into Power 5 and specifically at Cal where you have academics and athletics, and it's a very tiny percentage of people in that situation, and definitely not arrogant, but it's perspective.
Yeah.
Totally perspective. Did you guys ever open up to each other at that point? Like we're struggling through this together? Like, is that how the friendship started or not really?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think we were that close in the fall.
Yeah, I think you can tell me, but like there was maybe some like subconscious like bonding through that. Like yeah. I think we both saw each other at captain's practice. And I remember when we had our first team meeting and I was like sitting in there and then I saw Jake walk through the door. I was like, let's go. We like dapped each other up. So yeah, I think there was like a little bit of that kind of subconscious bond because we both kind of made it on at the same time, had the same process. But yeah, I feel like we were involved in pretty different social circles too for that first semester. And because I think neither of us were super enveloped in the team quite yet, like we didn't have that kind of circle to bond in. But yeah, no, I also don't think we really opened up about kind of the struggles, at least during the fall. But I will say like later, you know, as we've gotten to know each other much better and become a lot closer, I think we have talked about that. But then and there, like not really. Once
you got out of it, you guys talked about it?
I will also say I think me and Oscar, as like compared to even a lot of the team, have a lot of social life and clubs outside of soccer. And at least for me, like since it was also like the first semester that we're starting getting back into non-COVID times, like since soccer socially was kind of like not that great, I was trying to spend a lot of time building a social life outside. So I don't think me and Oscar connected probably as quickly as I guess we should have looking back. But yeah.
Yeah, there's another quote from one of the podcasts I released, the episodes I released very recently that says, diversifying what you're doing actually keeps you fresh because at times you can get so spun out by doing the same thing all the time. And I feel like you two have that exact thing. Like you're juggling so much, yet when one thing is off, you guys can just turn to another area of your life that's doing well, like your clubs, your social life. Any other hobby that you guys have going on, I feel like you guys were always so good at like, well, if soccer's sucking right now, I can always turn to this area of my life that's doing really well. Academics, clubs, extracurriculars, hobbies, etc. I feel like you guys always had that. Whereas I see other guys on the team that it's like if soccer's going poorly, their entire life is going poorly. Yeah. And I feel like that's a huge advantage that overall gave you two perspective that most other guys just never had. Do you feel that was the case in terms of pressure and performance?
I think one thing I gained over my time is I really had to decide, would I rather play 30 minutes and have nothing else going on and have soccer be my whole life? Or maybe I don't play in a game, but I have my friends and my clubs and my academics. And I think probably last year, I mean, I went and studied abroad instead of training here in the spring. And I kind of realized, playing a little bit more would be nice, but it's not worth, at least personally, sacrificing all the other things I like about being at Berkeley and just being in college and stuff. So I think that was definitely like a decision I had to make at some point, was how much is my life going to just be soccer, or is my life going to be a bunch of different things, and soccer is just one part of it?
That's well said. Yeah, I agree. I think there's so many like amazing parts of being a student here and like living at this school, that I think it was like, for me, and I'm sure for you, it was like really hard to justify like a full sacrifice of all those other things, just to be like, maybe marginally more involved in soccer. But yeah.
That's something I've totally realized over the past 8 months since August. Again, just went through a lot of personal things, whether like it's noticeable or not. I don't know. I don't know if you guys ever noticed, but I definitely went through a lot of things in my head, especially last summer, of like, I'm not where I want to be, but I had fun, but like that's not what I want to do with my life, etc. And something I came across, especially since I was so involved in like many different things. I have multiple interests, and I was like always trying to be everywhere. And something that I came to realize is that you can have anything you want, but not everything you want. And I think that's why your sacrifices say more about you than anything on your resume does, or any success per se does. Like, I think if you really want to get to know someone, see what they're sacrificing in order to do that thing, because actions simply reflect your priorities. So like studying abroad. All right, I'm going to prioritize studying abroad and having that experience over soccer. All right, being in a frat, which at some point, honestly, we talked about this. We were like...
Outed.
I mean, you were in a frat, and that's totally fine. We've had other legendary keepers live in a frat, which is totally fine. But I think at some point, I remember when we were coming up with like, there's a transition in coaching. What are we going to do? And I, at the time, had no clue you were in a frat. Like, because you were only one semester in, so I didn't know. Yeah. And I was like, we should like frat, like we're just gonna write it down, no frats. And you were like, dude, but like, can I, like, what's the situation? I was like, fuck, I didn't know that was your situation. And you handled it so well. You knew how to balance those two very well. But at the same time, like, there's that specific trade-off at times, and that's totally fine.
I think it is. That's a great point. I think being involved in so many areas of campus and life here, I think that has been one of the strongest things that has stood out to me, because, being involved with so many things, you have so many different ways that you have to spend your time and distribute that time. And you realize quite quickly that you can't have everything you want. You can't go to every event. You can't go to every party, for all these different groups, and then still also go to practice every day. There's you have to objectively make sacrifices. And I think it comes down to kind of engineering those sacrifices in areas where you're like, okay, I'm going to give a little more to this, but I'm going to have to take off from this other area. And I think that's an important skill to learn how to have. And also just it's important to kind of be exposed to that kind of sacrifice like you're talking about. So I've been very grateful for that. Yeah,
because you can be everywhere and nowhere all at once, right? And that's how I felt at times too. I think I definitely gave it all I had at the time. You know how there's people that say like, if you only have 40%, but you give 40%, that's all, you gave everything you had. Sure. That's how I feel with soccer looking back. I always think like, I could have done more. Like looking back, it's like, I really could have done more if I really pushed myself. But then it's like, but I had other areas of my life. Like I had the clubs as well, like within the student athlete community. I had the podcast, which was inconsistent, but it was still a lot of work for me on top of things. I have memories stored in my pictures of like me staying up during Cal Day, and it's like 1 a.m. and it's everybody's out, or midnight, and I was just editing the podcast because I wanted that episode to go out. And it was all trade-offs, and it's looking back at it now, and maybe it'll happen for you guys in a year where it's like, now that I'm working a job, now that I'm just studying this one thing and not having anything else involved, it gives you so much clarity, I feel like. And maybe it's a good thing when you have a commitment like soccer to be able to bounce off of other things and not be not be as pressured. And you lose on a Saturday or Sunday or Thursday, whatever it is, and it doesn't ruin the rest of your week, you know? And I think that's a big difference.
I think something people always ask me, like non-athletes, is like, how do you have so much like time? How do you fit this all in? How do you go to class and do all the clubs and stuff? I really think our practice was in the morning. I think it was just a great way to start the day, and it's something I'm gonna miss, starting with practice, seeing all the guys. Like, it was really nice. And you know, over time, I had to sacrifice. I had to drop some clubs and some other activities to make all the timing work. But having soccer be there was for sure, like, made my entire experience better. I was happier going to class and doing clubs and all this other stuff because I had soccer there as something to, you know, rely on and fall back on. I mean, like last summer when I was interning, it was really hard to play soccer because it was a lot of work and I couldn't get out to our USL practices, so I had to go find other places to play. It was really different not having soccer every single day. And I think that's definitely an adjustment I'm going to have to make as I start working.
I think there's two things there. The first one is, if you want something done, just give it to somebody that's already busy, right? Like student athletes, to an extent, especially those that are on top of their academics, which again is a portion of it. I'd like to think it's a good amount, but it's not necessarily all of them. But I think it is true, when you are on top of your academics, involved with the team, and have things going on outside, you're naturally going to know how to manage your time. Yeah. You are. Is that how everybody is? No, but there's a good portion of people that have all three going on, and you're not going to be the best at all three, or maybe even at one of them. You're just not, because you're involved in so many different things, but you'll get things done. And I think the other one is getting it out of the way in the morning, like you were saying, objectively. And I know that it's like, there's so many different articles and posts and whatever social media wants to make of it in its rhetoric, but like waking up and being outside off your phone with your friends, working out, is objectively a great way to start your morning. Yeah. You know, like it's, you can make all this fuss out of it and talk about all these things that you see on social media. That's not the point I'm trying to make, but it's a great way to, like, it's a great way to start. You're not on your phone for like 2 hours. You're hanging out with friends. You're working out, and then the rest of the day you have to yourself. Yeah. What better way is there to start, you know?
I think like it would be, you know, sometimes I'd wake up on like a day-to-day basis and I'd be like, oh, like I have to wake up and go play soccer. Like it's a lot of effort. Like I was up late doing homework last night, but when I like look at it big picture, or I look back on the week or the month or the year, I'm like, man, I was so happy that I woke up to go to practice today. Like I'm so like grateful that like we got to do that. Even if I didn't appreciate it at the time, I think like having that there for me just made like my whole everything I did at college better. So I mean, I think like trying to keep something up, like obviously I'm not going to be playing this level of high level of soccer, but something like that is going to be hopefully important to have, and something I could try to find as I like, you know, in the professional world.
Yeah, there's, I mean, so many different things. Obviously I've gotten into running, but I took that last semester of senior year off, and that was like, yes, I had so much fun. Socially, it was great, but it got to a point a year ago this time, I was in the worst mental state I've ever been in my life. And not many people know that. And I just felt like shit, like physically and mentally worst shape of my life ever. And I mean, you can do running, you could go to the gym, or you could play pickleball, play golf, play pickup soccer, whatever it is. But I feel like, especially people like us that grew up that way, I'm sure you'll find something, because we just need it, you know?
Yeah.
Going on the imposter syndrome thing, I feel kind of bad right now when you guys were like, I was going through this, but like you guys talking about me, we didn't really talk or hang out as much. And I'm like,
yeah, it's your fault.
Like, fuck, I didn't want to be mean to these guys. But I'm remembering what that time was like for me. Personally, I was going through some stuff that semester specifically, but on top of that, that's when that's the summer. The summer you guys came in is the summer I got surgery. So I came off of redshirting, COVID, meniscus tear. So I was like in a very similar situation to you guys. And I mean, I'll say this especially because they're my friends now, but in the moment, that last semester, I was just not close with anyone on the team. Like, frankly, I just wasn't. Maybe Juan, and pretty much that was it. Like, I would hang out, mess around with guys, but like, I didn't go out there wasn't any of, team hangout. I was not there. Like, I did not want to see the guys. And in January, when all the older guys left, who, again, I really like now, but in the moment, quite frankly, I didn't really like them as teammates. And it's just an issue we were dealing with. And I think the culture changed so much after that because of the conscious efforts there were around that. But I think I did feel like an imposter the entire time. Like, to talk about the recruiting class coming in, originally, the original recruiting class was 3 guys in my class. It was Colin, Armand, Togo, and myself. Out of those 4, I was the only one not on the national team.
Damn.
Togo is Japanese, and he was on the U.S. national team. Like, that's the level we're talking about, right? And I was just the only one. I think I played my cards in a very similar way to you guys, where I found where my strengths shine the most again and where I have the least amount of competition. I felt like I had more to offer than just soccer.
Sure.
With that being said, it does suck when you show up and it's just a bunch of Galaxy kids just like pinging the ball. And I'm like, what is going on here? You know, and I struggled with that a lot. I'm curious how you guys got out of that. Like, was it just with time? Was it with the culture? What made you guys gain confidence on the field?
I feel like it happened quite naturally over time, and it was a mix of like a bunch of different things. I think the biggest thing was just naturally kind of adjusting to the level and playing better. In practice, kind of being a better competitor, and then maybe you start to win like Scrub Cup or like North v South, and you're like, hell yeah, like that's me. You know what I mean? Like, I do deserve to be here. And as well as, becoming closer with the guys off the field as well. And you kind of, that dynamic turns into like, oh, now we're friendly on the field too. And you realize like, oh, these are starting to be my homies. And for me, like, getting close with the goalkeeper group that year was huge, and kind of being more comfortable. And I think, when you gain that comfort and you're kind of excited to go to practice every day, you're like, okay, I do belong here. I'm not an imposter, but it took time, but that's just me. I don't know about you, Jake.
Yeah, I think it was pretty much all about the social aspect. I mean, I don't want to talk too down on the guys that left, but I mean, that spring and that Italy trip was really, really big for me. I mean, I think we got close during the spring. Like, I got really close to like Ago in Italy, and having guys there who I like would actually consider like good friends just made my soccer so much better. And even if I had that little bit of imposter syndrome, I knew there was guys that would have my back and who believed in me. And I think that like it was really pretty much all the social aspect of the team that kind of brought me out of that.
I can't remember the quote off the top of my head right now, but there's something like, when your personal life is doing well, you get to be messy in your work life or something like that. Like, when you can take care of your personal, social life, everything else will start working out, rather than the other way around. Can't remember it off the top of my head right now, but I think it's similar. It's like, again, the episode I just posted right now with Skylar Magula, he was saying, as soon as I started to realize that it was all about relationships, because if you don't include relationships in the sport, what really are you doing? You're playing soccer, you're putting a ball in a net, that's it. Yeah. You're pole vaulting, like Skylar. Yeah. It's just about seeing who can jump higher. Or like, I remember Isabel Ivy talked about this as well on the podcast. She was saying, like, if it's not about the relationships or personal development through the sport, it's just about seeing who can swim faster from one side of the pool to the other. Yeah. And I like it makes no sense. But once you build these relationships, I feel like it makes things so much better. And my freshman year, I was just like, I don't need to be friends with my teammates. I just need to go out and play well. And I feel like that's definitely not the right approach. I'd like, is that what you guys are saying pretty much as well?
Totally.
I think so. I also think, like, me and Oscar talked about if we want to, like, keep playing soccer, into the future. And I think one question we'd asked each other is, like, do we really love soccer or do we love being with the team? And I think we both probably came to the conclusion that we actually just love being with the guys more than just, like, kicking a ball around, as you said. And yeah, I definitely think over the years, as I've gotten closer to the guys, like last year and this past year, 2 years ago when you were there, I thought I've just played better because I enjoyed being there. And I did not enjoy being there my first semester on the team. And I think that definitely hurt my soccer as well.
No, for me, I remember specifically what I read because it's one of the books we had to read for class. But when I was in that stage, because it was the same semester that we were going through it, it's the thing that's wrong about imposter syndrome is that for the most part, no one is thinking about you at all. They're too busy with their own doubts and their own work. And that's what I realized. It was like, oh, nobody cares if I messed up in practice. Like, I'm thinking about it the rest of the day. But really, no one cares. Yeah. Nobody remembers it. And I remember my biggest insecurities would come out when I would go up to someone and be like, was that like a good pass for validation? And it's like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, nobody cares, bro. Like, nobody cares. Yeah. And once I realized that, I was like, oh.
It's freeing. Oh,
yeah. Everyone has to go through that, though. I think every freshman, everyone new to the team goes through the same. Everyone new to Berkeley. I know, like, at the business school, I mean, I have so much imposter syndrome being around people who are starting, big companies, working at great, crazy, firms. And I think like, just realizing that, no one is like focusing on what you're doing is like really important to advancing in anything, not even just soccer.
Also that nobody knows what they're doing. Yeah. Like you do have things on your resume. You see the LinkedIn posts, you see these people getting playing time, but really nobody knows what they're doing. It's like we're all in a similar stage, don't you think?
I feel like also like going back to what we're talking about sacrifice, like you realize, okay, this person, maybe they've achieved like something that like I could never do, but you got to understand that comes at a cost to something else that you may have had the privilege of experiencing. So, whether it be in sports or your career or whatever, like you got to realize there's some trade-off they gave to get there. So, yeah.
I think that's why specifically comparison is terrible. Like, yes, you hear comparison is a thief of joy, but I think comparison is terrible because you don't consider all the factors that go into it. People think, oh, they were so good at soccer or this club or the business school, but you don't consider the exact trade-off. And it's not a three-piece suit. It's a onesie. You have to accept the whole thing. So they're so good at business school. They have this post on LinkedIn, this internship, and it's like, well, yeah, but to have that, you also have to sacrifice everything they did in order to have it. Do you still want it?
Exactly.
Probably not. It's a onesie. You don't get to pick and choose your outfit. It's just the whole thing.
I think it's like when I'm in just like focusing on myself as like a student, I'm like, man, these guys are getting way better test scores than me. They're going to way better firms. But then like I try to look, I'm sure we've all had this, and I'm like, they're also looking at me and they're like, wow, he's a Division I athlete. Like I think there's a lot to be said about that. And how, like, like you're saying, everything's a trade-off. Like, I've traded off. Maybe I could have worked at a better firm, but I wouldn't have been a Division I athlete. Like, what's more important to me? And I think, for me, like, the way me and Oscar at least have approached school and, like, the way we've done trade-offs, at least, I don't want to speak for you, but I think has been the way I'd want to do it if I went back again, probably.
I agree.
I remember specifically on that topic, I won't mention him directly, but it's a mutual friend and you both obviously know him. But one of our friends that works finance in New York, after my half marathon, we were talking over the phone and he goes like, that's so awesome that you got to find what you like. And it seems like you're doing so good at it and your time was great. And that's awesome. Like, I wish I had something like that. I was just like, you know what? Like, the result is awesome, but the waking up early before school in order to do it and quite literally not having a social life and going to sleep early every single night, and it's a Saturday night and I'm in bed at 8 p.m. because I'm dead, that wasn't that cool. Like, I don't think that's awesome. And he goes like, yeah, totally. And the only reason I bring this up is because that's the same thing in my head. I'm like, damn, he works at a nice place, living in a nice city, like doing all these nice things, has a great life. And if I bring that up to him, he's like, you have no idea what I'm going through. And we all just make up these stories of what somebody else is going through, when in reality, it's like you just have to put yourself in their shoes, and that's never going to happen. So might as well not compare yourself,
Yep, well said.
With all these things, to close off this chapter of the conversation, because this was a big thing for me, not having to, I don't know, there's ways people deal with this in therapy and things like that, where it's like, oh, in your head you have to forgive these people. But I think a much better way to do this is to pay it forward. So it's like being the leader you wish you had, or like, what could you do better? And I think that's the approach we took with the team. But you guys had more years to experience that, and you guys went into a leadership role. So like, what did you guys do differently as upperclassmen on the team to make sure that others didn't go through this sucky experience that you guys had?
I think, at least for me, I actually talked to like Mental Lenny, who's our like mental health coach on the team, about this. About I didn't really have as great of a desire this year to go out every day and be the hardest worker like on the field. But what I really want to do is be a really hard worker and making sure that everyone felt included and we had a good team culture. And we talked about how that could be my goal for the season, the reason I like wake up to go to practice every single day, my motivation. And I think I would have loved to have someone on the team when I was there who like was kind of like in our boat, who tried to integrate us in the team. I think like the way we hang out now, I feel like it's much less cliquey. I wouldn't mind anyone coming over to have a drink or hang out. And I feel like some of us, like the older guys, Wyatt including, even Kevin and Ago are a bit younger, but the older guys on the team have really tried to make an effort where it's like open door. Everyone is invited to everything. Like you're a freshman, but you're not like below us in any way. Like you deserve, to enjoy your time on the team and work hard and get everything out of being a Division I athlete and being on the team that you deserve. And yeah, I don't know if you have anything more to add.
Yeah, I feel like part of it for me was picking the best pieces of my experience and trying to emulate those, from like older guys who I used to be on the team with. Like, well, maybe this one, I like how this one guy was nice to me, like off the field specifically, or something like that, or how this guy pushed me in practice, and all these like the most beneficial parts of my experience, which maybe were not all inherently positive. I kind of want to just be as good at collecting those and kind of emulating that kind of energy to the younger guys. So, whatever that might be, like just being the best reflection of like my positive experiences as I can. And it's a pretty rewarding experience. You feel like, I'm doing my best to kind of make this experience better, and like I'm trying to take away the negativity that I experienced and only give these younger guys the best experience that I can. So yeah,
it's kind of interesting to an extent, because I don't know, maybe this is a bit too far, but maybe like that's what our parents are doing. Like if you think about generationally, and that's when people start saying like, oh, these kids nowadays, they're soft. And I don't know, do you think that changes that competitive culture to an extent? Like you take away the sucky parts for sure, but do you think it also it makes the younger guys a bit softer in competition because of that?
I think that's a great point. I think it's a tough like line to draw, you know what I mean? Because on one hand you want to make it an immediately positive experience in a comfortable place, but you got to understand that like the competitiveness and the kind of eliteness also comes from a place of discomfort. And it's a tough line to draw. Like, where do you draw that line? So
yeah, like you don't want to be a dick,
but
you want to win.
Yeah, I definitely think we've talked about how we need some more of that on the team. But I mean, at least for me personally, like if I look at it in like a big picture, it's just a game, and I think everyone on the team is happier than they were when I was a freshman. And at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. I think if we're like just looking at it like simplistically, I do wish we were more competitive, but would I trade us being 20% like more competitive in practice for 20% less close off the field? Like I probably wouldn't. I don't think I would.
I think ideally it's like a pendulum.
It's a balance, yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, okay, maybe the year before us it was like a little too like rough, and then maybe swing back, and now we're a little too soft. So and ideally you kind of try and find that like middle balance. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, yes, maybe some things are softer, but the results are better.
Yeah.
And the team chemistry is way better. So I think as of right now, it's looking like a win-win situation. But I think at some point, like to reach the very, very, very top, at some point somebody's going to have to be a dick.
I think we talked about how, like, you, for instance, have been there. Like, your oldest guy you played with compared to the youngest guy you played with is like an 8-year difference. Mm-hmm. And I think we are coming to the end with, like, Kevin and Ago, Wyatt leaving of kind of like your main generation where it's a lot more competitive. So I am definitely, like, interested to see like, not competitive, I guess is a bad word. Competitive, just like being like dicks to each other, pretty much. And I'm interested to see once those guys leave, if there's any like lingering culture of that. Yeah, kind of like being an asshole a bit. Because I definitely think, like when you're a freshman, you're not going to be like an asshole.
No.
They're quite the same. So it's interesting how these guys grow into that culture, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a growth experience, but yeah, I mean, I think about the oldest guy that I played with, and I think that guy specifically must be close to a decade older than the youngest guy I ever played with.
It's pretty crazy.
Which is it's a generational difference. It really is.
Yeah.
Seeing how they were raised, and I've talked about this with other people as well. It's just a big gap.
Yeah.
Like when you think of a 30-year-old and a 20-year-old, that's the reality of the people I played with, which is wild. Like someone like Jordan. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, 90s baby.
Kids.
Yeah. On that more specifically, like the competition versus being grateful that you talked about with Mental Lenny, who I've never met, but that's funny. I was like, who's Mental Lenny? Why that trade-off again? Like, what kept you guys going in this last year? I've talked about this a lot as well. Like that last year, I just finished strong. Like we talked about it, Tate and I, on the episode that went out, how we found different types of motivations to keep us going in that last season when we were already burned out, mentally out of it and stuff. You found this motivation to keep on going that way. For you, Oscar, what kept you going and showing up to practice and on the team every single day?
Yeah, I mean, for me, especially in that last season, like it was basically just like this is like a last hurrah. And I kind of almost went back to the mentality of like when I tried to make the team, like, okay, either live in regret or like give it your all for this kind of period of time. And yeah, that was really enough for me. I was like, okay, it's kind of hitting me now that this is coming to an end soon, and I think I would really regret it if I wasn't giving it my absolute all. And I think part of it too, to be honest, was like I had felt that I wasn't doing that to the best of my ability, like the semester before, for example. I felt like I had made some sacrifices in areas where I was like, okay, this is kind of taking away from my soccer a little bit. And I think I really felt the discomfort that created me. And I was like, I don't really like that I'm not really enjoying my soccer to the fullest. And so those two kind of things came together quite nicely and really pushed me into making that fall like really worth it and really like the best experience that I could make it. So
what type of sacrifice was it? Like, just to understand, or I mean, do you want to talk about that or no? If you don't, it's totally fine. I just don't understand.
No, I understand totally. I was like super cryptic, but like just like I think I just committed more time to things off the field that semester, and those are things that I care about and things that I definitely see the value in, but I think it was also a good learning moment to be like, okay, this is maybe where I need to swing back into soccer, especially for this last semester, and really buy in. And yeah, I think that really made the experience so much better, and I'm really happy that I had that mindset going into it. So, yeah.
What about this idea that it's not that deep? Again, like it's like, I don't know. There's some sort of existential crisis there of like, does this really matter? Like, what really are we doing here? I think a way I think about all of these things is definitely a sport serves as a vehicle that gives our life some sort of meaning. Like, again, we're kicking a ball into a net. Like, we're not doing much. Oh no, but then the tactics and this, yeah, that's how we entertain ourselves as a distraction to the life that we're living. And to an extent, it's almost like life has no meaning except that which you give it type of thing.
Sure.
Once you realize that though, like all the passion for the sport that's been built up, at least for me, it was like 15 plus years of passion for this thing, and then realizing like it doesn't really matter as much as I thought it did. Did that take away some sort of pressure for you guys? Did it affect in a positive or negative way?
I think for me, it definitely took away some pressure. But I mean, it is also a crazy realization that it's not that deep. It really is not that deep. But I will say, sports has taken me so much. Soccer has taken me around the country, around the world. I mean, I would not have had you guys as friends. I mean, most of my friends I've met playing soccer, and I think that's what I'm going to take from it. Like, I think we'll be all lifelong friends way after we're done with soccer. And I think, looking back, that's what soccer and sports has given me, is a community and relationships and stuff like that. And in that sense, it is deep, because I think relationships and that community is really important. I mean, that's like your life. And I think being an athlete brings you that like nothing else. So in that sense, I don't think kicking the ball per se is that deep. But what you build in the relationships I've built out of it, and where it's taken me around the world, and the people I've met, definitely like leaves like a good taste in my mouth, and I'm happy that, you know, I realize the actual game is not that deep.
I think it's about like when to choose your perspective too, kind of. You know, there's so many different ways you can look at sports. You can look at it, like we were saying, like a medium for social relationships, or like you can look at it in like a kind of a wider gratitude of like where it's taken you in life. But you know, when you have lows in sports, I've had my fair share. It's real. I think it is also really important to kind of have in your toolbox the ability to take a step back and be like, okay, like, yeah, that sucked, but it's not that deep, you know? Like, I think it's important to not beat yourself up too much about, you know, the things that happen, you know, when kicking a ball. So, but yeah, I think it depends. You got to choose.
Yeah. Because we could say the exact same thing about any other activity in life. You could say that about school, about work, about social life, like anything really. But I think it's caring about these little things that to an extent make up our life anyways. So like, might as well care about it to some extent. But it's the same thing anywhere. The relationship aspect, the finding some sort of connection with others aspect, or even personal development through it. That's why I think sports serves as a vehicle for life, which you could find anywhere else. It doesn't have to be sports. It could be art or any sort of thing, any sort of creation, really. I'm curious, like at some point, just to start closing off, did you guys feel like, this is the end of my career? Like this specific moment, I know I'm done. I know this was enough. Like, for example, there's this famous little poem that Kurt Vonnegut wrote on Joseph Heller. Joseph Heller, the author of Catch-22, and Kurt Vonnegut, the author of Slaughterhouse-Five. He says, Joseph Heller, an important and funny writer now dead, and I were at a party given by a billionaire on Shelter Island. I said, Joe, how does it make you feel to know that our host only yesterday may have made more money than your novel Catch-22 has earned in its entire history? And Joe said, I've got something he can never have. And I said, what on earth could that be, Joe? And Joe said, the knowledge that I've got enough. And I have a very specific moment that comes to my head of like, that was it. That's my enough. That's where I'm going to call it. But I'm curious if you guys ever had that experience.
I feel like I can't pinpoint a specific moment. I feel like it's kind of grown over time. I mean, I think I probably had it earlier than a lot of people when I went to play like at Barca Academy, for instance. And I saw the older guys. I saw Julian Araujo, and it was a Barca, and Matthew Hoppe, and these guys. I was like, oh my God, like these guys are so good and so much better than me. And I was like, man, like obviously I was 14, 15 years old. I wanted to go be a pro soccer player. But I think that kind of, clicked in my head. Like there are some really good players out there. And it's important that I'm not just relying on that, like as my only avenue to be happy or look at myself as a success. I don't think that took away from me working hard, but I definitely looked at it like man, like if I can use soccer to at least take me to somewhere like Berkeley, that's really important to me. Instead of using soccer to go play in Barcelona. Like I think trying to set expectations there, but no, I don't think there's like a specific moment I guess that I could point to where I was like, oh yeah, I've completed or whatever.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me it was like there wasn't maybe one moment. It was maybe spread out kind of amongst my last year here, a little bit in the fall. I think a lot of the fall though I was kind of focused on still improving and still kind of grinding. So I feel like that maybe moment of fulfillment didn't happen until the end, when we had our loss against Stanford or something like that. But I also, I played with the team a little bit in the spring too. So I feel like that moment kind of gradually built up. And, maybe that last spring I've been taking in kind of each practice and being like, okay, I'm grateful for this. It's coming to an end soon. Kind of slowly building that kind of gratitude for the whole experience, and to a place now where I'm quite content with how things have gotten. So yeah, maybe a little different from what you're talking about, but that's how I feel.
Yeah. No, for me, it was definitely like I went into my last game ever thinking I would stay longer. And I remember just stepping off the field. Yeah, I stepped off the field and I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to play better than that. Like, it was just that moment. Like, it was a solid, I don't know how long it was, maybe 20, 25 minutes. And there's a specific play that I have cut out in an edit, and it's maybe like 10 seconds, but it's a specific tackle that I remember, like, that pretty much, like, sums up my entire career. Like, just that one specific, because I did that play so many times in my life. Like, I did that exact same play way too many times in my life, and I was like, that's a great way to end it, type of thing. It was that, and then the game in Rome, honestly, because not even like, I mean, just because, I was like, when else am I gonna do that? And sure, it was a friendly, like, it doesn't matter, but to me, it was also super important. Like, I did that in front of my family, and I was like, when else am I gonna score twice in front of my family playing for Cal? Versus, I mean, that's irrelevant though, because it was like a scrimmage, whatever. But
it was really cool.
I think so. I mean,
amazing experience for sure.
It adds to it for sure. But like, I would think, playing conference or like playoffs or something. Like, there's a difference. But I mean, it is pretty cool.
Like finish on top kind of thing.
It was one of those where it's like, like, sure, we lost the game, but in my eyes, for my personal performance, it was like, I gave what I could. And it came out that both happened in front of my family, and that's a great way to end it for me. To start closing off here, there's this quote that to me has shaped a lot of how I view things, and it's, we all have two lives, and the second one begins the moment we realize we only have one. And I'm curious if you guys felt that with soccer. Like, you felt like it was over at some point, and then you get this opportunity to play, especially you, Oscar, because I know, Jake, coming into the team or coming into college, you knew you had a very solid chance. But for you, Oscar, you said, like, you felt at some point it was all over. And then you get an extra, 3 seasons, 3 years? Yeah. How did that feel, and what takeaway do you have from that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like it's for the majority of my youth life, like going all the way up to the end of high school, like soccer had always been like a given. It's always just been happened to be a part of my life, which is, at least that's what it felt like. And I feel like, you, especially being younger, like, you don't really understand that perspective of like, it's actually quite a gift to be able to do this, and kind of to be able to be on teams and kind of have these experiences with like your closest friends. Like when I was in high school, our school went on like a long CIF run, like the first time in history. And I think, it wasn't until like after that where I realized like, wow, that was actually a really special experience. Like when I was going through it, I was just like, oh, is it just like soccer? It's like just always how it's always been. So I think getting into what you were saying, like having that all being taken away from me, whether it be through the weird COVID circumstances and my knee, most especially, and stuff like that, and being like, wow, like this could all go away in the blink of an eye. And then being able to get it back, through college soccer and playing here, I think it's exactly what you're saying. It gives you a whole new take on life, this kind of second life to the game, to my experience of the game. Which has only amplified my experience here and made me really grateful for kind of every day and just the ability to kind of be on this team. So, yeah.
The end always gives perspective to life, whether that's like a tiny death in soccer retirement or legitimate death,
or like
in
a near
life.
Death too, like
totally
it's close. Yeah. So,
did you have anything like that?
I think so. After COVID, like, I wasn't playing a ton during the spring because there was nowhere to play, and I came out in the summer. And then I was like playing, but I was like, I wasn't really sure of my status. And I know we've talked about this, how like one day our assistant coach, Jake Wilson, just texted me and was like, what jersey number do you want? And I was like, what? But then that's kind of like when I knew I was on the team. And yeah, that kind of like brought me back to life for sure. Because I was going into that semester still like not sure I was like 100% on the team. I was just acting like I was just going to go and do it like a normal semester. So it definitely made me want to like put my head down and, you know, start grinding soccer harder again. Because, you know, now it's back. Like it was gone and now it's back. So, yeah.
For sure.
Finally, last couple questions. Especially through the entire experience that you guys had and moving forward in life outside of soccer, if there's one thing you can take away of being a teammate or a good leader on the team that you'd apply moving forward, any advice you could give, what would it be from the experience that you had from start to finish here on the team?
That's a good question. It's a tough question.
Yeah.
Just one.
I mean, I think
Not just one, but anything
Sure.
that comes
No,
to
yeah.
mind.
No.
I would say, I guess, like when I came on the team and we talked about the imposter syndrome, you know, I look at a lot of the older guys, like the guys who played on Galaxy or the national team, and like I'm like, those guys, they have it figured out on soccer. Like they're full rides, like it offers from all these great schools, like they're gonna go play pro. But like looking back and now getting to know everyone, I'm like every single player has gone through that. As a freshman, as a sophomore, as a junior, at every age. So I think as a leader, understanding everyone is going through it, like imposter syndrome or feeling like they don't belong, and trying to do what you can to make people feel like, you know, they deserve to be here. Like everyone who's on the team deserves to be here for one reason or another. So, you know, trying to make it a culture where everyone gets that and reminds them, like, you know, you're playing a Cal, like, we want you here, you belong here. And I think that's something I've learned, like, through positive and negative experiences. So, yeah.
I think maybe it's similar to what you're saying, but and it maybe sounds quite simple, but I think just having empathy for those younger guys. And I think having gone through, you know, 3 or 4 seasons as an upperclassman, I think you realize how powerful it is to have been in the same exact position that all the guys below you are in, or maybe not the same exact, but super similar situations, because it gives you, you know, this privilege to be able to know what they're going through and help offer, you know, solutions or whatever it might be. And I think you really understand the value in that. And maybe not even as a leader, but going out maybe now into the real world and maybe seeing where you can kind of gain that important and valuable knowledge from someone else, maybe a leader who you look up to. And I think it might, for me, like, I think it might make me much more kind of grateful for that, and it would help me seek that out more, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Very last one. What advice would you give to someone, whether it's in sports or in life, that is trying to walk on to a new team?
It's tough. I think what he said about giving it his all, like those 2 or 3 days, is really good, and kind of just like leave it all out there. I mean, there's literally nothing negative about giving it a shot, and there's no negative in trying your best. So I think going in there with confidence, and when you're out there on the field, I think it's important to not think of yourself like a walk-on or you're trying out. Like, think about yourself like you're already part of the team. Think about yourself like as someone who deserves to be there, because I think you'll play better. And thinking of yourself as much as you can like you're already part of the team, I think is just like opening doors to you just playing a lot better, is what I would say.
It's funny, I was like just talking to a goalie who's trying to walk on in college now, and I think it's super important not only to, like, you know, give it your best and kind of put it all on the table and feel comfortable with the team, like Jake's saying, but also to understand that there are so many factors that are going to be outside of your control. Like, even to go back all the way to what you were saying about being lucky as a walk-on, like, as much as you don't want to dumb it down to just that, like, luck is also a huge part of the experience. Like, for me, like, I was fortunate enough that they were looking for a goalie at that time. But you also got to understand that it could have also gone the other way, where even if I did everything the same way, I did all my rehab, did all my training, came out and played even better than I did during my tryout. If one little factor was different, I wouldn't have made the team, and it doesn't matter, you know? So, you know, control your controllables and do everything you can, but also have a little bit of, you know, give yourself a break in the sense where understand that, like, okay, like, there might be some parts of this that are out of my control, so.
Yeah, I think the best part about that is definitely that luck happens when opportunity meets preparation. So luck will not take place if you don't have any preparation. Like, you need the preparation, but the opportunity side to it, you can seek for it, you can be persistent in it, you can try everything possible to make it inevitable. But at the end of the day, it's outside of your control. It's outside of your control whether or not there was an injury on the goalkeeper team here at Cal. That was not that, like, you don't wish that upon anyone. You don't want that opportunity because it ends up happening that way. But the fact that you had the grades to get in, you had the athletics to be on the team, all of that, like, just made it inevitable. Like, you were prepared for whenever an opportunity showed up. It just happened that it did. And totally, it could have gone the other way, but I feel like it's definitely much better to try, because even just by the act of trying, you'll be better along in the process anyways.
No, totally. Yeah.
From my end, that's all I have. Is there anything I missed? Anything else you guys want to touch on?
I'm all good.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. First double guest episode.
We finally did it.
There we go. Thank you, guys.
Hell yeah.